Good morning. Good morning, Maddie. I'm just getting over a cold, so I still sound sketchy. However, I feel okay. I slept all day yesterday, so I feel more alive today, and I feel like I look a little less torn apart than I did yesterday. Happy Monday. Welcome into Mindful Monday. I only brought one book this week because last week we only got through one book anyway. So I wasn't going to kid myself thinking I was going to get through a bunch of books, but I have a couple more behind me if we have time. But the one that we're going to read today together is Welcoming the Unwelcome by Pema Chodron. Pema is a wonderful writer. She is currently still alive. She is one of the few female mindfulness Buddhist writers that teach, and I really love her. This is a really great book if you struggle with acceptance, which, if you're a human being, you probably do. I feel like most of us have problems with just accepting the yuck. So anyway, this is the one that we're going to dive into together today. I hope everybody had a nice, restful weekend. We're not in my office today. It's a no school day. So I'm in my house in one of my many book backdrop shelves that I have. So this morning we're going to dive into Pema's book, Welcoming the Unwelcome. She also has another book called When Things Fall Apart, which was her first book that I read. I found it at Goodwill for a couple dollars, and it was such a good find. And she talks a lot about when things are really hard or seem really bleak, those can be really challenging moments, especially if you're a mindfulness practicer. Those are really hard moments in mindfulness practice. And so that was a really good read. And this one is equally as good. I think especially right now as a teacher, it's hard to teach people and lead people to accept things that are terrible. However, acceptance is the first step in the direction of change. In order to change anything, we must first acknowledge and accept its existence. If we don't, there is no hope for change. So that's why I think materials like this are important for that continued expansion of the heart space, which if you are in the depths of a mindfulness practice, you'll know that that is what is at the heart of our practice is open heart expansion, that practice of continuing to expand the heart as wide as it will go. Again, I'm going to upload this to YouTube when we're all finished. I got some good feedback on that, so let's begin. The first chapter of this book is called Begin with a Broken Heart. So I'm just going to read to you the first little part of it. It says, when you engage with spiritual teachings, it is wise to know your intentions. For example, you may ask yourself, what is my purpose in reading this new book with its ominous title, Welcoming the Unwelcome? Are you reading it because times are uncertain and you want to get some clues about what will help you make it through whatever's coming? Are you reading it to gain wisdom about yourself? Do you hope it will help you get over some emotional or mental patterns? Or did someone give it to you with lots of enthusiasm and now you don't want to upset them by not reading it? Your motivation may include all or some of the above, and they are all good reasons, even the last one, for reading any book. But in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition to which I belong, when studying spiritual teachings, we set out by arousing an even greater motivation known as the bodhicitta. In Sanskrit, bodhi means awake, citta means heart or mind. Our aim is to fully awaken our heart and mind, not just for our own greater well-being, but also to bring benefit, solace, and wisdom to other living beings. What motivation could top that? See, the very first sentence. Our motivation for studying is to open the heart space. The awakened heart begins with the wish to be free from whatever gets in the way of helping others. We long to be free from the confused thoughts and habitual patterns that cover up our basic goodness, so that we can be less reactive, less fearful, and less stuck in our old ways. I feel like the more I open my heart, the less stuck I feel in my own ways and my own patterns of thinking and my own behaviors, because human beings are so habitual. We love patterns. We behave in patterns. And sometimes it's really hard to step outside of those patterns. But an awakened heart space can help break up some of those patterns that we get stuck in. We're reading out of Pema Chodron's Welcoming the Unwelcome. And I have lots of tabs on this one. It was an excellent read. One of the chapters, Overcoming Polarization, was a really meaningful chapter, especially with the intensity of polarizations in our current time and space. And so I'm going to read quite a bit out of this chapter. I think that it was impactful. The time we live in is a fertile ground for training in being open-minded and open-hearted. If we can learn to hold this falling apartness without polarizing and becoming fundamentalists, then whatever we do today will have a positive effect on the future. That was the little quote before the chapter starts. This is a very interesting chapter, so I'm just going to go on to read little bits and pieces of it. There are many ways to talk about the problems of this world, but one way or another, all of them have to do with polarization. We all have a tendency to divide people, things, and ideas into sharply contrasting categories. Consciously or unconsciously, we carry around the concepts of us and them, right and wrong, worthy and unworthy. In this framework, there is not much room for middle ground. Everything is at one pole or another. When groups of people or whole nations get together, these concepts, they can become hugely magnified, which may result in large-scale suffering, discrimination, oppression, and war. These national and global problems have their roots in subtle workings of our own individual minds. All of us, to our own degree, experience some feeling of opposition inside of ourselves, with each other, and with the world around us. We're never quite satisfied with ourselves as we are, other people as they are, and things as they are. Often, we feel this as an aversion to whatever we're experiencing. We don't like what's happening and we want to get rid of it. This can start out as a subtle level of aversion, which can grow into a more obvious irritation. From there, it can escalate into a full-blown anger and hatred. Other times, our feeling of opposition has to do with desire or craving. For instance, we may want an object or situation very badly because we think that it will make us happy. But these desires are also based on seeing things as separate from us, seeing them as other. In either case, aversion or desire, we're caught in some form of polarization. Whether we are for or against, there is a lack of openness and relaxation in our minds. If we observe ourselves closely, we'll probably discover that this is the case most of the time. That made me think for a long time. I journaled about that, and I thought about the polarization that exists in my own mind, whether it's from aversion or desire, and what that meant in my own life. And honestly, questions like that and trains of thinking like that, that's shadow work, investigating where the deeper roots of feelings come from, the deeper roots of our patterns. That is deep shadow work, understanding the depths of self and where these things are stemming from. And I think that that can be especially helpful when looking at our own extreme feelings, whatever that is, to try and bring that back to a more grounded and open-hearted middle view. I'm not drinking tea today. I'm drinking lemon and water and honey. She goes on to say, if we view others from the standpoint of just like me, we have a strong basis to connect with them, even in situations where it seems most natural and reasonable to polarize. I think that's a really important concept, to not lose sight of our interconnectivity. We talked about that last week. No matter what the person is in your mind, who they are in your mind, you're still connected as human beings. And not losing sight of that is one of the most important aspects of open-hearted work, is understanding our connections to each other, even when maybe you don't want to. In my case, anyway. Even when extreme religious groups behead people or racist gunmen murder people praying in churches, there is room to feel our connection with the perpetrators rather than dehumanize them. That takes a lot of work. I just want to say that as we're talking about this subject, it takes practice and it takes work to not allow those seeds of hatred to take root. Even for myself, and I am a pretty new mindfulness teacher. I've been teaching and studying for 7 years, which is pretty new in like the scheme of life. And I don't think it was until maybe the past year that I've been able to bring myself away from polarization and into my loving heart, you know what I mean, back into an open-hearted place. And she goes on to say, those who believe in violence are desperate to get some kind of ground under their feet, desperate to get away from their unpleasant feelings, desperate to be the one who's right. What would we do if we ever felt so desperate? Is a very intense shadow work prompt. When people are lashing out in ways that we've seen on screens, that comes from a place of extreme desperation, of extreme disconnection from the human spirit. And not to say that cultivating empathy and forgiveness makes any situation like that okay. It doesn't. But what it does do is it allows the seeds of forgiveness, the seeds of compassion, those seeds of goodness to be watered within us instead of the seeds of hatred. Because unfortunately, the seeds of violence, of anger, of hatred are contagious. And once you let that take root in you, it takes over like wildfire. And so for me, I do my best to cultivate that feeling of peace, of connectedness, of understanding to the best of my ability at the time. Do I still get angry? Yes. Do I still think, F that guy? Yes. However, those feelings are fleeting. When I close my eyes and I water the other seeds within me, the feelings of anger dissipate pretty quickly. This is one of my favorite parts of our chapter, Overcoming Polarization. is working with polarization and dehumanization won't put an immediate end to the ignorance, violence, and hatred that plague this world. But every time we catch ourselves with polarizing our thoughts, our words, or actions, every time we do something to close that gap, we are injecting a little bodhicitta into our usual patterns, that open-heartedness. We're deepening our appreciation for our interconnectedness with all others. We're empowering healing rather than standing in its way. And because of this interconnectedness, when we change our own patterns, we help to change the patterns of our culture as a whole. The results won't be immediately apparent. You probably won't notice any big changes in a week or even in a year. But please don't give up too easily and think, this bodhicitta doesn't work for me. I'm going to look for something where the results are more immediate and tangible. Believe me when I say your patience will pay off. If you commit to overcoming polarization in your mind, it's a life changer and it will help this world as well. I love her. What a powerful little chapter. I'm going to read another portion that my eyeball ran to. She says, having compassion doesn't mean that we can't take a stand, because I think that's important. Just because I'm a little peaceful mindfulness teacher doesn't mean that I don't take a stand when others are being hurt and when others' rights are being infringed upon, when other people's way to peace and happiness is being obstructed. Having compassion doesn't mean that we can't take a stand. It is important to speak up when we've been hurt and when we've seen others be hurt. When we observe or experience abuses of power, it is equally important to listen deeply without judgment when people speak about their experiences and their suffering. What has been dysfunctional does need to be openly addressed, and I think that's a very important piece of what we're talking about here with combating our own polarizations and the polarizations of the outside world, is that what has been dysfunctional does need to be openly addressed. We are at a time when old systems and ideas are being questioned and falling apart, and there is a great opportunity for something fresh to emerge. I have no idea what that will look like and no preconceptions about how things should turn out, but I do have a strong sense that the time we live in is the fertile ground for training in being open-minded and open-hearted. And I also believe that. I think that a lot of people are seeking community. A lot of people are seeking a way to soothe their own suffering. And mindfulness, what a beautiful solution to both, right? If we can learn to hold this falling apartness without polarizing and without becoming fundamentalists, then whatever we do today will have a positive effect on the future. I truly believe that. I think that the work that we do now as a society, as a community, to open our hearts to connect inward, which then in turn connects us outward. This work is very important for, I don't know, the survival of humanity, really. Not to be dramatic, but that is what I believe. I think that there's hope for us. We're perusing through Pema Chodron's Welcoming the Unwelcome, a really beautiful book for accepting things that are shitty. And if you live in this timeline in America, there are a couple things that are pretty hard to digest. And I feel like this book has helped give me some good morsels to help other people and myself. Because I get asked questions in workshops and sessions, and people ask me, how can I continue on tending to my inner being and also being a good activist? Often people feel very paralyzed by what's going on. They want to be helpful, but they don't know how. And that was a conversation that came up in community meditation on Wednesday, was how can I be helpful when I feel so paralyzed? And there are a couple ways that you can be helpful without, putting on your bandana and going down to a protest. Number one is boycott, 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 boycott. Don't go to Target. Don't go to Walmart. Don't shop on Amazon. Be mindful with your money. That is a great way to be a positive influence, to be an activist, and to help implement change is by shopping mindfully. Use your money at local businesses. It takes a little more effort, but it's worth it. The second is continue to cultivate community and joy, to not let the outside influences dampen your inner light. Because when we are dampened in that way, depressed and whatever, we're easily manipulated. So continue to cultivate joy and community. Those are very important aspects of any resistance. And I will say that don't stop speaking and gathering. Those are also important aspects of any resistance. That's why I never shut up about it. Even though I low-key get a little shadow ban, I'm okay with it. We're gonna keep speaking out for the people. My cough medicine is working. My honey and lemon coating my throat instead of cough medicine because I hate cough medicine. We'll move on. In Pima's book, I can't believe we're already halfway through this live. I'm such a yapper. However, I will be uploading this on YouTube, so I feel like I have to keep the yap in constant motion. The next chapter, the next couple chapters have so much about shadow work in them. The art of failure and just as it is, which I hate failure. I don't like failing. Whenever I don't succeed at something, oh my God, it touches the depths of my soul and I feel terrible. However, trying to reframe how I feel about failure, and this chapter was a good one on it. When we fail, in other words, when things don't work out the way we want them to, we feel our vulnerability in a raw and powerful way. Our uncomfortable ego tries to escape from that rawness. Oh, yuck. One of our most common methods is to blame our failure on something outside of us. Yeah. Our relationship doesn't work out, so we blame the other person, or perhaps the whole gender. We can't get a job, so we blame our potential employees or society as a whole. The other common approach is to feel bad about ourselves and to label ourselves as a failure. Either way, we end up feeling like there's something fundamentally wrong with us. You may have a fixed idea of what you're experiencing, such as dread, anger, disappointment, but when you let yourself be present with that feeling and experience it directly, you may find that you can't pin it down so easily. That dread or anger keeps morphing and shifting and changing. Even though its unpleasantness haunts you, even though it feels so threatening, when you look hard and discover that you can't really find anything substantial. When you sit with a feeling, when you sit with whatever it is, anger, fear, disappointment, shame, when you sit with that long enough instead of running away, you'll discover it changes. You'll look at the roots of where that came from. From my own personal experience, when I sat with the anger, the deep anger I had towards my parents, for example, I sat with that anger and that anger changed into pain. And then I could understand and help myself better. The more you sit with your feelings, they will transform and dissipate. And that deep-rooted anger and hatred that I had towards them does not exist anymore. It has dissipated into something else. When I ran away from that feeling of anger, it amplified. I got angrier and angrier and angrier. And all of a sudden I was, a cutie little 20-something-year-old with the deepest, most explosive rage, punching holes in walls, fighting people, because underneath all of that suffering that I kept running from was that deep well of pain. And once I sat with that, I did not feel the explosive anger anymore. When you sit with whatever it is long enough, you will discover that it honestly just needed acknowledgement. At least in my experience, when I take the time to just acknowledge what that feeling is, to sit with myself and say, I'm angry at my parents, but am I? Or am I hurt? Am I disappointed? Am I sad? All of the above. And then I can allow the energy of that feeling to start to dissipate. Good morning. Hello, welcome in. Those of you just joining us. This is a good one. This chapter is The Fine Art of Failure. When we're able to hold the rawness of vulnerability in our hearts, we can use that energy to create poetry, writing, dance, song, and music. We can make something of it that touches and communicates with other people. Artists have done this from the beginning of time. When you touch that painful place, it creates energy of movement, of emotional flow. That's where art is created. If we close down to our unpleasant feelings without awareness or curiosity, if we always mask ourselves or try to make our vulnerability go away, out of that space comes addictions of all kinds. Out of that space comes aggression, striking out, and violence against others, all of the ugly things. On the other hand, if we can go beyond blame and other escapes and just feel the bleeding raw meat quality of our vulnerability, we can enter a space where the best part of us comes out. Our bravery, our kindness, and our ability to care about and reach out to others. Our best human qualities come out of that space. I love the image of that. That deep place within where all of the bad is, where we protect it, where our fear and shame and guilt and hatred, all those things are. If we can allow those to be seen, it is what connects us so deeply to other people, because we all have those things. We all are fearful, judgmental, afraid, full of shame and fear. And when that raw human vulnerability of mine can meet the raw human vulnerability of yours, interconnectivity is born. We see how connected we are. And when I'm connected to you, I'm less likely to hurt you. When I'm connected to me, I'm less likely to hurt me. What a nice little chapter. I have found so much peace and morsels to keep me going in life through these books that I share with you guys. That's why I'm always reading to you. Sometimes it's hard to sit down for people to read and, sit down and read a whole book. I speed read, I take lots of notes, and I love to yap. So coming on here weekly to yap at you with books is one of my favorite things that I do. Love Spark commented, one of my daily affirmations is, I allow myself to feel everything. I allow myself to release everything, to feel and release everything. That reminds me of one of my favorite poems from Rumi, The Guest House, where he talks about, let your inner world be like your guest house, and allow each of those feelings to come in and let them leave again when they choose, knowing that they each bring what they need to bring. Excuse me. And that's a part of not holding on, you know what I mean? not holding on to those feelings so tightly, allowing them to just be seen, and let them go. Moving on chapter-wise, but same concept of not rejecting our feelings. We can allow space for these uncomfortable thoughts and emotions to just be there. Just let them be. Not rejecting them, but also not buying into them. That concept of allowing them in and allowing them out. With this attitude of non-judgment, we can develop genuine appreciation towards ourselves just as we are. That's such an important little morsel. Because even if you're sitting here listening to this and you're full of anger and rage, relatable, allow yourself to be just as you are. Breathe into that space and acknowledge that it's there. If you're feeling disappointed, breathe into that space. Acknowledge that it's there. Allow yourself to be there for a moment and don't run away from it. Give yourself the honor of experience, which is simple but very effective. Allow yourself to be that. Whatever it is, give yourself the honor of experience. We can develop genuine appreciation towards ourselves just as we are. This will help us get to know and trust our basic goodness, which is complete and lacking nothing. I always tell people that I work with who hire me as a teacher for individual sessions, I always tell them, our goal is that you won't need me, because you don't anyway. What you need is you. Your most effective guide and teacher lives very deep within you. And it takes that process of uncovering, of reconnecting back to that deep inner source. Your deep teacher is you. Mindfulness, meditation, shadow work, those are great ways to rediscover that voice within, that inner guide. But really, it's you. You are complete and lacking nothing. And Thich Nhat Hanh is the one who told me that when I first started frantically studying mindfulness, and I was scared and I was depressed and angry, and I thought, oh my God, something has to change. Thich Nhat Hanh said, don't worry, things can change if you can go deeply within yourself. And I thought, okay. And he also said, you don't need anything outside of you. You don't need anything expensive or fancy. You need to sit down and be with you. And I thought, oh my God. Okay. And I started that process of breathing into my body, acknowledging my breath in my being. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. Coming back into my body often. And that practice helped me feel at home, so I could hear myself, so I could be with myself. And when I need guidance now as a mid-level, I wouldn't say seasoned, because I'm like under 10 years of practice, as like a practiced teacher, when I need guidance, when I need a word of advice, I go within. I am my guide. I am my best source of information. And I never had that skill until I practiced going in and getting to know what it felt like in there, what my inner voice sounded like, what my own essence felt like, because I had never done it before. I had always spent a lot of time outside of myself, seeking comfort and solace with drugs, with alcohol, with relationships, with work, with food, whatever, insert anything. That's what it is. But when I moved that seeking mind to the inside instead of outside, I redirected that longing to the inside, I found myself. I found peace, and I found who I am today, which I feel is who I've always meant to be. She goes on to say that in his teachings on the lotus and the mud, Atem Tuten says all flaws that exist are a part of us. They begin to heal on their own when we accept them as they are. That's deep shadow work right there. They can be the fertilizer for our inner growth. Recognizing them without denying or maneuvering around them is the key point. That's shadow work to a T. When you can examine and look within. I'll use myself for an example. When I can go within and I can look at my envy, when I can look at my seeds of hatred, when I can look at my anger and not run away from it, see it as a part of myself, as a part of my path to open-heartedness. Here are the things for me to work on and focus on. When I can see those parts of myself and accept them as a part of my path, true self-acceptance and love can be born. You cannot hate where you come from. You cannot hate what made you. It is not the path. And that was a really hard one for me to digest, all of the pain and suffering of my life and childhood. I have grown to appreciate those things for being a part of who I am today. Those sufferings gave me a deep appreciation for life. It took me many years to come to that perspective, but that pain and suffering is what awakened my heart. How interesting to say that out loud. I put a little heart by this one because I loved it so much, so I'm going to share this with you. The wonderful irony about this spiritual journey is that we find that it only leads us to become just as we are. I'm holding back tears. The exalted state of enlightenment is nothing more than fully knowing ourselves and our world just as we are. In other words, the ultimate fruition of this path is to simply be fully human. And the ultimate benefit that we can bring to others is to help them realize their full humanity just as they are. That's such a beautiful one. Crying while congested is so hard. I think that when I started this path, I had no idea where it would lead me. I just wanted to be okay. Any of you that follow me or have heard me yap at you before are fully aware of this story, but when I had a baby, I had such bad postpartum anxiety and depression. I was really caught off guard by that. I had wanted to start a family so bad. My child was so wanted. And then when I had her, I felt so emotionally distressed and distraught. I thought, oh my God. And that immediately birthed such a beast of shame within me. And my postpartum anxiety and depression just got worse and worse. And in a complete mode of desperation, I Googled, how can I be happy? And Google said, try this book by Thich Nhat Hanh called Happiness. Thank God. And I read that book, Happiness, and the first chapter, in the introduction, the very first sentence says, you don't have to go anywhere or do anything to be mindful and to find happiness. All you have to do is breathe. And I thought, thank you, God. I could not handle anything else. I had a newborn baby. I was at home all the time and in my head all the time. I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. And so being able to just breathe was such a relief, you know. And I practiced what I talked about earlier of breathing into my body and out. and just practicing going inward often. And it was very life-changing. And now that was 7.5 years ago, and here we are. I can't believe it. And I have found that, happiness and joy are very contagious. When we cultivate that happiness and joy within ourselves, it makes other people curious to that. When you smile at somebody on the street, when you say hello, those are things that strengthen our connection to one another and awaken that heart, that open heart in other people. When more of us learn to trust our basic goodness, when we learn to trust that inner guide, when we learn to go within, when we learn to be connected to heart, society will get stronger. It doesn't mean that there won't be hard times. It doesn't mean violence, injustice, and poverty will end. It doesn't mean that the polar ice caps won't melt and that the water in the oceans won't rise. It doesn't mean that there will be a lot of but it does mean that there will be a lot of resilient people who never give up on humanity and who will always be around to help others. It does mean that when things get rough, it will bring out the best in people rather than the worst. If we learn how to not lose heart, we will always find ways to make important contributions to our world. And I do believe that. And I'm crying again, but when we awaken our heart space, it does make the world a better place. Our individual connection to ourselves is what helps brighten those connections to other people, to the world around us. I'm going to end up losing my voice completely. Maybe, although I do talk in a very calm and low tone, which doesn't use my vocal cords as much as when I'm using my regular tone of voice. I agree. Corky said there's so many people, that's so many people's only hope to better human connection. And that is my hope, is to deepen my connection to myself and to my community, to my brothers and sisters in the world. And I feel like that was our topic last week too on Mindful Monday. We were reading, what were we reading? Awakening Compassion, maybe? Something Compassion by Atem Tuten. And that is part of what we're doing here, is awakening that heart space together. And there's a lot of us, I feel like, in this world that are on that path, you know? Good morning, Alicia. I'll be putting this on YouTube as well, so that you can yap. Come listen to me fully yap. And this is what we've been reading out of, is Pema Chodron, Welcoming the Unwelcome. Nini asked, recovery, only if you feel comfortable answering. I would love to answer that. I have 15 years sober. I got sober in 2010, which I will say that sobriety does play a huge part in my spirituality. I fully believe that alcohol is a big disconnector from self. So when you're consuming alcohol, it disconnects you so deeply from your inner being. Same with narcotics. Those are things that block off that connection to self. And so I always suggest that people, the best that you can, refrain from those items. It will further disconnect you from yourself. And you did. Nini said, congratulations, I'm working on my spiritual path and heard that word. Proud of you. Thank you so much. Sobriety is a big part of my life. And prior to getting sober in 2010, I had a really, really bad drinking problem, and I was heavily addicted to narcotics. And that furthered me into this hole of despair, of disconnection. You know, so if you're listening to this and you are struggling with alcohol, with addictions in any way, I think that my first word of advice is to be easy on yourself. A lot of people find themselves in that position, and it doesn't mean that you're bad or that there's anything wrong with you. It just is. The second is to work towards a path of sobriety. Harm reduction is just a fine way to get there. I know that sometimes there are people who are on a recovery path, or that's their life, and maybe they don't agree with harm reduction, but you do what works for you. There are many paths to the same destination. Thank you, everybody, for being here in this live. This has been beautiful. I love community so much, and I love reading to you guys. It's my favorite thing to do. I'm going to close this out with a chapter, Our Wisdom Changes the World. We're closing out our Mindful Monday with continuing to read from Pema. We love her. Did I read this one last time? There's no way. Maybe I did. Did I? Because now I'm reading this who knows? Anyway, Pema says, somebody once asked the Dalai Lama how one could maintain the view of basic goodness when there is so much evil in the world. He responded by talking about little children. I did read this last time. Ooh, a morsel. Who are almost always kind and considerate, open and generous. This goes along with some studies I've heard about how toddlers relate to the world. When shown a picture of other children being happy or kind, say to little animals, the children laugh and smile. But when they see pictures of unkindness or of children getting hurt, they become unhappy. These findings demonstrate that early in life, before a lot of fixed ideas become entrenched, the quality of basic human nature is loving. As we grow up, secondary causes arise that obscure our open and loving nature. For example, when we reach adolescence, a lot of our past karma ripens in a way that often results in confusion. But these obscurations are only temporary. Like clouds moving on a clear day blocking the sun, our basic goodness isn't gone and doesn't have to be recreated. We just need to apply an effective method to uncover it. It is like waking up to an overcast, cloudy day and saying that the sun isn't shining. But of course, we know that the sun is always shining. It never goes away. We need to become familiar with the clouds, and if we really get intimate with them, we see how insubstantial they are. Their density and solidity fall apart, and we see that the sun of wisdom has never stopped shining. Oh boy. I love that so much. Thich Nhat Hanh has many teachings about that, about recognizing that the sun is always behind the clouds. Although we may have a very cloudy day, societally, in the world, it may seem very cloudy, but that the sun is it's under it all. Sometimes it just takes some time to rediscover that. I love. Thank you all for being here for Mindful Monday. My daughter snuck out of here. She was in here listening to me read. I'll be putting this up on YouTube, so thank you for being here. I will cut, and I usually stay on live for a couple minutes and chit chat. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And join me next week from 9 to 10 for another Mindful Monday.